David Chen's footsteps echoed through the empty halls of the Quantum Dynamics Research Center. The midnight shift wasn't exactly thrilling, but it paid well enough to fund his graduate studies. Besides, the quiet gave him time to study between his security rounds. Tonight felt different, though. The air hummed with an unusual frequency, making the hair on his neck stand up. The quantum containment sensors were reading slightly higher than normal, though still within safety parameters. Nothing to report, technically, but something felt off. He paused at the window of Lab 7, where Dr. Harrison's team had been working on quantum entanglement experiments. The equipment was dark, powered down for the night, except was that a shimmer in the air, like heat waves rising from hot pavement, but inside an air-conditioned lab. David's hand moved to his access card. Protocol said to call it in first, but curiosity got the better of him. The door slid open with a soft hiss, and he stepped inside. "Hello? Anyone here?" His voice sounded smaller than he'd intended. The shimmer intensified, coalescing into two distinct shapes. David's breath caught in his throat as they solidified into human forms. Two women, identical down to the last detail, but clearly not human. Their skin had a subtle iridescent quality, and their eyes were completely silver, with no pupils or irises. Observation subject acquired. The one on the left said, her voice carrying an odd harmonic quality. Identity confirmation. David Chen. Security personnel. Clearance level 2. The other added. Quantum sensitivity rating. Exceptional. David backed toward the door, his heart hammering. "How do you know my name?" "Please remain calm, David Chen." They spoke in perfect unison. "We are the twins of Tilara, and we need your assistance. Earth's survival depends on it." He should run. He should definitely run. But something in their tone, their presence, held him rooted to the spot. What are you?" The twin on the left stepped forward. "I am Sarah." The other followed. "I am Tara. We are quantum observers from the Andromeda Galaxy, sent to prevent a catastrophe that your instruments will detect in approximately 47 of your Earth hours." A catastrophe? David's scientific curiosity began to override his fear. What kind of catastrophe? "A quantum cascade failure," Sarah explained, her silver eyes seeming to peer into his soul. "Your Dr. Harrison's experiments, while brilliant, have inadvertently created a weakness in your reality's fabric. Without intervention, it will trigger a chain reaction that will collapse your entire solar system into a quantum singularity." Tara moved to one of the lab computers, her fingers dancing over the keyboard with impossible speed. "We've been monitoring your facility for some time. You were chosen because of your unique quantum sensitivity. You see things others miss, don't you, David?" He swallowed hard. All his life, he'd noticed things others couldn't explain. Subtle patterns, connections that seemed impossible. It's why he'd been drawn to quantum physics in the first place. "How can I possibly help?" "We need access to the quantum core," Sarah said. "But our presence here is technically unauthorized. The Galactic Council believes humanity isn't ready for contact." "We disagree. The quantum core is off-limits to everyone except Dr. Harrison's team," David protested. "Even with my clearance, I can't." A piercing alarm cut him off. Red emergency lights began pulsing throughout the facility. "They've found us," Tara said urgently. "The Council's enforcement drones. David, you must decide quickly. Help us save your world, or watch it collapse into quantum chaos." Through the lab windows, David could see strange geometric shapes descending from the sky, their surfaces rippling with impossible colors. His security training told him to call for backup, to treat these beings as intruders. But every instinct, every one of those inexplicable patterns he'd observed throughout his life, told him they were telling the truth. "The quantum core is 3 levels down," he heard himself saying. "But we'll need Dr. Harrison's personal key to access it." The twins smiled identical smiles that seemed to bend the light around them. "Then we better hurry. they said in unison. Time isn't just running out, it's beginning to unravel. As David led them toward the elevator, alarms blaring around them, he couldn't shake the feeling that his entire life had been leading to this moment. All those nights studying quantum mechanics while on security duty, all those patterns others had dismissed as coincidence, they had prepared him for this. The enforcement drones were getting closer. Through the windows, he could see them scanning the building with beams of light that seemed to fold space itself. The twins moved with liquid grace, their forms occasionally shifting like smoke when they passed through the scanning beams. "Your world is unique, David Chen," Sarah said as they descended in the elevator. "Humanity exists at a crucial quantum junction point. Your choices, your actions, ripple across multiple realities. Which is why the Council fears you," Tara added. "Human consciousness affects quantum states in ways our species cannot. You don't just observe reality. You help shape it." The elevator doors opened onto the darkened quantum core level. Emergency lights cast everything in a crimson glow. They could hear the drones above them, their otherworldly hum penetrating the floors above. "Dr. Harrison's office is this way," David said, leading them down the corridor. "But what exactly are we going to do once we access the core?" "We're going to teach you how to save your world," the twins said together. "And in doing so, you're going to teach us something about what humanity truly is." The sound of shattering glass above them indicated the drones had breached the upper levels. As they ran toward Dr. Harrison's office, David realized that everything he thought he knew about reality was about to change. And somehow, improbably, he was ready for it. Dr. Harrison's office door yielded to David's security override, but what they found inside made him freeze. The office was immaculate, too immaculate. Every paper perfectly aligned, every book precisely shelved. The twins moved past him, their silver eyes scanning the room. "The Council has already been here," Sarah said, her voice tight with concern. "They've altered the temporal state of this space." "English, please," David asked, still watching the corridor for drones. Tara ran her iridescent hand along the desk's surface. "Time has been paused here recently. They knew we were coming." A holographic display suddenly materialized above the desk, showing complex mathematical equations that made David's head spin. The twins studied it intently, their forms shifting slightly as they processed the information. Dr. Harrison wasn't just studying quantum entanglement, Sarah explained. She discovered something ancient, something buried in the quantum fabric of Earth itself. "The Nexus Key," Tara added. "A device created by the first ones, capable of stabilizing quantum fields across entire galaxies." David heard the drones getting closer, their alien hum making his teeth vibrate. "And this key can prevent the cascade failure. If we can find it," the twins said in unison. Dr. Harrison learned its location, but she encoded the coordinates in a quantum cipher. David approached the holographic display. The equations seemed to shift and change as he looked at them, like they were responding to his observation. Then he noticed something familiar. "These aren't just equations," he said, excitement building. "They're musical notes. Dr. Harrison plays violin in the university orchestra. She's encoded the coordinates in a quantum harmonic sequence." The twins exchanged looks of surprise. "This is why we needed a human," Sarah said. "Your species sees patterns we cannot." A thunderous crash from above made them all jump. The drones were getting closer. David quickly pulled out his phone, accessing the university's music department website. "Dr. Harrison performed last month. If I can find the recording." His fingers flew across the phone's screen as the twins took defensive positions near the door. Their forms began to blur and shift, taking on a more ethereal quality. David tried to ignore the impossible sight of their transformation as he found what he was looking for. "Got it." He held up his phone, playing the violin solo from Dr. Harrison's last performance. The holographic equations pulsed in response, realigning themselves into a new configuration. "Coordinates acquired," Tara announced. The Nexus key is hidden in a location you call the Atacama Desert. Child, that's on the other side of the planet, David protested. Distance is less relevant than you think, Sarah replied, her voice now carrying multiple harmonics as her form continued to shift. But we must hurry. The quantum cascade has already begun. As if to emphasize her point, reality seemed to flutter around them. For a brief moment, David saw multiple versions of the office overlaid on each other. Some pristine, some in ruins, some that defied description. The drones will be here in seconds, Tara warned. David, we need you to make a choice. Coming with us means leaving everything behind. Your life here will never be the same. David thought about his ordinary life. His security job, his graduate studies, his tiny apartment filled with physics books. Then he thought about the patterns he'd always seen, the connections others missed, the feeling that reality was bigger than anyone suspected. I already made my choice when I let you into the lab, he said. What's the plan? Sarah smiled, her form now barely human. We're going to show you how to quantum shift. Your consciousness is already primed for it. You just need to learn to control it. I need to what now? The office door burst open as 3 enforcement drones entered, geometric shapes that hurt David's eyes to look at directly. Tara grabbed his hand, her touch sending electric tingles up his arm. Close your eyes, she instructed. Feel the quantum states around you. Choose the one where we've already escaped. David's scientific mind wanted to argue that this was impossible, but he'd already seen too much to doubt. He closed his eyes, feeling the strange energy flowing from Tara's touch. The drones were advancing, their alien presence distorting the air itself. And then he felt it, like 1,000 different versions of reality all stacked together, each one slightly different, each one equally real. Just like the patterns he'd always seen, but now he understood what they meant. Choose, Sarah whispered from somewhere both near and impossibly far away. David reached out with his mind and chose. Reality shifted. When he opened his eyes, they were standing in a vast desert under a star-filled sky. The twins had regained their more human appearance, but their silver eyes now held something like respect as they looked at him. Remarkable, Sarah said. You shifted all 3 of us on your first try. Most species require years of training to attempt a quantum shift, Tara added. But we suspected humans might have a natural aptitude for it. David looked around at the Atacama Desert, his mind struggling to process what had just happened. Why? What's so special about humans? The twins exchanged one of their meaningful looks. That, Sarah said, is what the Council fears most of all. You're about to find out exactly why humanity was chosen to protect the Nexus key. In the distance, something massive and ancient began to pulse with a familiar quantum signature, calling to them. The real adventure, David realized, was just beginning. The quantum signature pulsed through the desert night like a heartbeat, growing stronger as they approached. David's newly awakened senses could feel it resonating with something deep inside him, something that had always been there, but never understood. The Council's drones will track us here soon, Sarah said, her silver eyes scanning the horizon. We need to reach the key before they do. I still don't understand, David said as they climbed another dune. Why hide something so important on Earth? Why trust humans with it? Tara's form flickered slightly in the starlight. Because your species has something no other race in the galaxy possesses. Quantum uncertainty. What do you mean? All other sentient races, Sarah explained, exist in fixed quantum states. Our choices, our paths, are largely predetermined by our very nature. But humans, she gestured at David, humans exist in multiple quantum states simultaneously. Every choice you make actually happens across multiple realities. A sudden tremor shook the desert floor, sending cascades of sand sliding down the dunes. Above them, the stars seemed to shiver and blur. The cascade is accelerating, Tara warned. We have less time than we thought. David steadied himself against the shaking ground. These quantum states you mentioned, Is that why I could always see patterns others missed? Why reality sometimes seems flexible? Precisely, the twins said in unison. Humans don't just observe quantum reality. You participate in it, shape it. That's why the first ones chose Earth as the hiding place for the Nexus key. Only humans can truly access its power. Another tremor, stronger this time. In the distance, David saw impossible colors flickering across the desert sky, quantum distortions becoming visible to normal human perception. Not good. There. Sarah pointed to what looked like an ancient temple structure, half buried in the sand. The quantum signature was emanating from deep beneath it. But they weren't alone. Dark shapes descended from the distorted sky, not just council drones this time, but something else. Something worse. The Void Hunters, Terra breathed, her form destabilizing slightly in apparent fear. The Council has deployed their elite enforcement units. The shapes resolved into humanoid figures in armor that seemed to absorb light itself. They moved with liquid grace, quantum rifles raised. Hail to! A voice boomed across the desert, speaking in harmonics that made David's bones vibrate. UAAVVIOLATED multiple treaties and CONTACTD and UNCLEARAD species. Surrender for NMEDUATQUANTUM dissolution. Sarah grabbed David's arm. They'll try to erase you from every reality simultaneously. Don't let them hit you with those rifles. Great advice, David muttered. Any other helpful tips? Yes, Tara said, her voice intense. Remember what we said about human quantum uncertainty. Use it. When they fire, don't just dodge. Exist in the state where they missed. The Void Hunters opened fire, their weapons shooting beams of pure quantum entropy. David didn't think. He reached out with his newfound awareness and chose. Reality flickered and split. He felt himself existing in multiple states at once, only some of which were in the paths of the beams. He chose to exist in the states that survived. The Void Hunters paused, clearly surprised by his ability to quantum shift without training. The twins took advantage of their hesitation, their forms blurring into combat configurations David's eyes couldn't quite process. The temple. Sarah shouted as she engaged one of the hunters. We'll hold them off. Find the key. David ran, his feet sending up plumes of sand as reality continued to fragment around them. The quantum cascade was getting worse. He could see multiple versions of the temple overlaid on each other, some intact, some ruined, some in impossible configurations. He reached the entrance, ancient symbols carved into stone pulsing with quantum energy. As he stepped inside, his consciousness expanded further. He could feel the key calling to him, resonating with something fundamental in his human DNA. Fascinating, isn't it? A familiar voice said from the shadows. How humanity never realized its true potential. David froze. Standing in the temple's central chamber was Dr. Harrison herself, but not as he knew her. Her form shifted between human and something else, something ancient and powerful. You're one of them, he realized. One of the first ones. She smiled, her face momentarily showing patterns that hurt to look at. We've been watching humanity for millennia, guiding your evolution, preparing you. Outside, the sounds of quantum combat intensified. The twins were buying him time with their lives. Preparing us for what? David demanded. For this moment, Dr. Harrison said. The galaxy is dying, David. Reality itself is becoming fixed, unchangeable. But humanity's quantum uncertainty could save everything, if wielded properly. She gestured to a pedestal in the center of the chamber. Floating above it was an object that seemed to exist in all possible states at once, the Nexus key. The cascade isn't an accident, is it? David said, understanding dawning. You triggered it, to force this confrontation. To force a choice, she corrected. The Council fears humanity's potential. They want to keep reality fixed, predictable, under their control. The key can either stabilize the quantum cascade, or use it to awaken humanity's true potential across all realities simultaneously. Another tremor shook the temple. Reality was unraveling faster now. David could feel multiple timelines pressing against each other, threatening to collapse. "Choose wisely," Dr. Harrison said, her form fading away. "But choose quickly." David approached the key, its quantum energy resonating with his very being. Outside, the twins fought for their lives against the Void Hunters. Above, reality itself was coming apart. The power to change everything was literally in his hands. Now he just had to decide how to use it. The Nexus key pulsed in David's hands, each beat sending waves of possibility cascading through his consciousness. Every choice, every potential outcome, existed simultaneously in his mind. The power was intoxicating and terrifying. Through the temple walls, he could hear the quantum battle raging. The twins were fighting not just for their lives, but for the very concept of change itself. "Your defense is futile," the lead Void Hunter's harmonic voice boomed. "The Council has decreed that reality must be stabilized. Humanity's quantum uncertainty is a threat to universal order." David looked at the key, understanding flowing through him. It wasn't just a tool. It was a mirror, reflecting humanity's unique relationship with reality. In its crystalline surface, he could see infinite versions of himself, each making slightly different choices. A scream from outside snapped him back to the present moment. Sarah crashed through the temple wall, her form flickering dangerously between states. 3 Void Hunters followed, their quantum rifles charged. "David," Tara's voice came from somewhere outside. "Whatever you're going to do it now. Reality is approaching critical collapse." He could feel it. The quantum cascade was accelerating exponentially. Above them, the sky was a maelstrom of impossible colors as multiple realities bowled into each other. The very fabric of space-time was unraveling. The Void Hunters raised their weapons. "Surrender the key," their leader demanded. "The human experiment must end. Order must be maintained." "Order?" David laughed, surprising himself. "Is that what you call it? Forcing reality into a single, fixed state? That's not order. That's death." He could see it clearly now. The Council's fear wasn't just about humanity's quantum uncertainty. It was about what that uncertainty represented. The power to change, to grow, to become something new. Sarah pulled herself up, her form stabilizing slightly. "David, the key. You must choose." "I already have," he said. David reached out with his newly awakened quantum senses, not just to one reality, but to all of them. He could feel every version of himself across infinite timelines, each experiencing this moment slightly differently. But they were all connected, all part of the same fundamental truth. The Void Hunters fired. David didn't dodge. Instead, he existed in every state simultaneously, hit and not hit, dead and alive, successful and failed. The quantum uncertainty that made humans unique became his shield and his weapon. The key resonated with his choice, amplifying it. Energy surged through the temple, through reality itself. The Void Hunters stumbled, their fixed quantum states unable to process what was happening. "Impossible," their leader said, but their voice was changing, becoming less certain. "You cannot. We are. I am." For the first time, the Void Hunters experienced quantum uncertainty. David could see their fixed states fragmenting, possibilities blooming within them like flowers opening to the sun. Tara appeared in the temple entrance, her silver eyes wide with wonder. "You're not just stopping the cascade," she realized. "You're using it, spreading humanity's quantum nature to other species." The Council was right to fear this, Sarah added, her form fully stabilizing as she absorbed the change. But they were wrong about what it meant. The temple walls began to dissolve as reality restructured itself. But it wasn't collapsing. It was expanding. David could feel consciousness across the galaxy awakening to new possibilities, breaking free from their fixed states. "This is what the first ones intended," he said, understanding flowing through him, not just to preserve humanity's quantum nature, but to use it as a template, to restore free will to a universe that had forgotten it was possible. The Void Hunter's armor was cracking, light pouring from within. But it wasn't destroying them, it was transforming them. David could see their consciousness expanding, embracing uncertainty, discovering choice. "The cascade," Tara said urgently. "It's reaching critical mass. If it's not contained, then we contain it," David said, "but not by suppressing it, by directing it, channeling it." He raised the key, feeling infinite versions of himself doing the same across countless realities. The power was overwhelming, but he wasn't afraid anymore. This was what humanity had been preparing for all along. "Ready?" he asked the twins. They nodded, their silver eyes shining with newfound possibility. Even the transformed Void Hunters stepped forward, their former rigid purpose replaced by awakened curiosity. Reality trembled on the edge of transformation. The next few moments would determine not just the fate of Earth, but the fundamental nature of existence itself. And somewhere, in the quantum fabric of space-time, David could feel Dr. Harrison, the first one watching, waiting to see if humanity would fulfill its ultimate purpose. The time for preparation was over. The time for change had come. The moment of transformation hung suspended like a drop of water before falling. David stood at the center of reality itself, the Nexus key blazing with possibility in his hands. Through his expanded consciousness, he could feel the quantum cascade reaching its peak, not just on Earth, but across the entire galaxy. "The Council's ships are entering orbit," Sarah reported, her silver eyes tracking something beyond normal space-time. "They're preparing to implement quantum lockdown protocols." "They still don't understand," Tara added softly. "They think they're preserving the universe by forcing it into a single state." David looked at the transformed Void Hunters, their once rigid forms now flowing with potential. "What do you feel?" he asked them. Their leader stepped forward, voice carrying new harmonics of wonder. "Everything. We feel everything. All possibilities, all choices. Is this how humans always experience reality?" "Not consciously," David said, "but it's always been part of us. The ability to exist in multiple states, to truly choose our path rather than follow predetermined patterns." Through the dissolving temple walls, he could see the desert night transformed into a canvas of quantum potential. Stars flickered between possible states, their light carrying messages from across time and space. Dr. Harrison's form materialized beside him, her first one nature now fully visible, a being of pure quantum possibility. "The Council's forces approach," she said. "The moment of choice is upon us." David nodded, understanding flowing through him like a river. "We don't stop the cascade," he said. "We don't suppress humanity's gift. We share it." He raised the Nexus key, feeling infinite versions of himself doing the same across countless realities. But this time, he reached for something deeper than power. He reached for understanding. The key responded, not with a burst of energy, but with a wave of consciousness. David felt his awareness expand beyond the temple, beyond Earth, beyond simple space-time. He could feel every consciousness in the galaxy. Council members, enforcement units, countless species all locked into their fixed quantum states. And he shared with them what it meant to be human. Not through force, but through experience. The joy of genuine choice, the thrill of uncertainty, the beauty of becoming rather than simply being. Above them, the Council's ships entered atmosphere, but something was changing. David could feel their rigid quantum signatures beginning to fluctuate, to embrace possibility. "They're experiencing free will," Sarah breathed. True free will for the first time. The quantum cascade reached its peak. Reality trembled. But instead of collapse, there was transformation. David felt it ripple across the galaxy, consciousness after consciousness awakening to new potential. The Council members themselves, experiencing the vertigo and exhilaration of genuine choice. The ability to change, to grow, to become something new. The first ones knew, he said, understanding at last. They knew humanity wasn't just an experiment. We were a reminder, a backup copy of what consciousness was meant to be. Dr. Harrison smiled. We hid the key on Earth because humanity would never simply use it. You would understand it, share it, even with those who tried to destroy you. The transformed void hunters knelt, not in submission but in gratitude. Around them, reality was reshaping itself, not into chaos, but into a new kind of order. One built on possibility rather than certainty. Tara stepped closer to David, her form shifting with newfound freedom. The council is standing down, she reported. They're requesting dialogue, not to control, but to understand. Of course they are, David smiled. They're experiencing what it means to be truly alive, to have real choice. The quantum cascade was subsiding now, but its effects would ripple through the galaxy forever. Species that had been locked in fixed patterns for millennia were awakening to new possibility. The gift of uncertainty, of free will, was spreading like starlight. Sarah and Tara exchanged looks, their silver eyes shining with something that might have been tears. We knew humans were special, Sarah said, but we never imagined. No one did, David replied. That was the point. True potential can't be predicted. It can only be discovered. As the desert night settled around them, stars twinkling with new possibility, David felt the weight of what had happened and what was yet to come. Humanity wouldn't just be joining the galactic community. They would be teaching them how to be truly free. Dr. Harrison's form began to fade. Our work here is done, she said. The rest is up to all of you. Every choice, every possibility, matters now. David looked at the twins, at the transformed hunters, at the quantum-touched reality around them. So, he said with a smile, who wants to help me explain this to my supervisor at the research center? Their laughter rang out across the desert, carrying harmonics of joy and possibility that had never been heard before in the history of the galaxy. Above them, the stars seemed to laugh too, twinkling with newfound uncertainty. The universe was no longer a fixed pattern of predetermined events. It was alive with possibility, with choice, with the potential for change. And it had humanity, wonderful, unpredictable, quantum uncertain humanity, to thank for it. The real adventure, as it turned out, was just beginning.